Lesson 5 is on page 162. The title is Genetic Technologies. What I need you to take away from this lesson is what is the difference between artificial selection, genetic engineering, cloning. So let me tell you what some of the basic differences are. For instance, artificial selection, if there's a test question on artificial selection, there's always going to be a normal person doing something. Maybe they're going to pick the largest tomato and they're going to use the seeds from that tomato to grow more tomatoes, which are going to be identical to the initial tomato that they picked. So there's always going to be a person doing something. They're selecting, they're making a choice, they want a certain trait to be passed on, and they're going to do that. Another word for artificial selection is selective breeding. So you can use those terms interchangeably. Artificial selection, same thing as selective breeding. We talk about selective breeding a lot when we are talking about animals on the farm. You can use them for anytime you're deciding who you're going to breed, what cows you're going to breed, what goats you're going to breed, what dogs you're going to breed. If the person's involved in choosing who's going to do the breeding, then you are definitely doing artificial selection or selective breeding. The other term I want to talk about is genetic engineering. What is the difference between genetic engineering versus cloning? Well, genetic engineering question is always going to mention DNA or genetic material somewhere in the question. A normal person cannot do genetic engineering. In order to do genetic engineering, the question is going to say a researcher, a doctor, somebody like that is the one who's able to do this. So that's your clue. If you're looking at a normal question about artificial selection, it's just going to be a normal person doing it. Genetic engineering is altering DNA. Anywhere on the question you see they're altering the DNA, and a normal person can't do that. Like I said, you have to be highly trained type of engineer in order to do this. Like when I showed you the movie Cracking the Genetic Code, those people could all do genetic engineering. So that's the main difference. Another thing to consider though is cloning. Cloning is mentioned in your book on page 167. But just remember, cloning is always going to be a copy. Cloning is going to be identical. If you see the word copy or identical in the passage of the question, then you know they're heading towards cloning. Whereas genetic engineering was altering, whereas cloning is copying. Keep those two things apart. And if you look at genetic engineering and cloning and compare it back to what we just said about artificial selection always involves a male and a female. Okay? Whether it's any type of animal. Whereas if you're doing cloning, you're just copying one organism. Okay? So that's another thing you can differentiate right there. Practical uses for DNA comes up on page 168. You can see it's used a lot in the CSI type organisms. You're going to do an activity here on page 169 where you need to find suspect. Just circle the one that's exactly like the DNA found on the crime scene. And by all means, do not ignore page 170. It talks about the controversies of DNA use. You kind of saw some of this in the movie I showed you, Cracking the Genetic Code, because once your DNA is out there, your DNA is out there. There's no getting it back. And please make sure you do page 171. Answer complete sentences. Use evidence from the text to support your answers, okay? Particularly question 8 is going to say the procedure used to make insulin in bacteria can be used to synthesize other biological materials. A lot of times you see this question show up on tests about bacteria and insulin. Just in case you don't know, if you have diabetes, you need to have insulin every day. So it's very important for society that there's insulin available. All right, give it a try. Once you finish a lesson in the book, send it to me. any way you want. Text me 813-891-8092. Send me a picture. If you don't have your book at home, which I know some of you don't, I was in the room yesterday, I saw your book sitting there. Just use the online version, go into Clever, hit Pearson, Realize, go into the text. You're going to be doing pages 162 all the way to 171. Just write the answers on a notebook paper, take a picture, send it to me. It's just that easy. Don't make it more complicated than it needs to be. However, there are activities to do once you're in Clever. So you're going to go into the text, you'll see the activities that I've laid out for you to do. And again, you need to turn those in to me. There's also going to be a test to take now that we're done with topic 3. So you're going to be taking that test as well. And they will tell me your grades once you submit those tests, okay? So before you start doing the other things I've posted about topic 4, please make sure you finish everything in topic 3. Thanks a lot. I'm here. Bye.